Did you guys know that inbreeding was good? Roll Tide. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here, the one and only truth pimp, dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason on a daily basis. Yeah, today's episode is interesting and troubling at the same time. A recent UK Health Service article actually tried to spin inbreeding, or more politely called cousin marriage to them, tried to spin this as a good thing. I'm calling it out as being nonsense and totally fabricated and more of a political measure to show acceptance for inbreeding because of the massive influx of immigration into the UK from countries, more specifically Muslim countries, that accept and promote inbreeding within their own communities. Back in September, the UK's National Health Service, the NHS, that's equivalent to our NIH, published a blog post on their official site. It warned against stigmatizing cousin marriages, inbreeding, and even listed supposed benefits like stronger extended family support and cultural continuity. Sounds harmless, right? Wrong. Inbreeding is the same practice that's been linked to skyrocketing rates of birth defects, genetic disorders, and massive burdens on our already strained healthcare system throughout the world. But this is UK, where they've come to accept this. Instead of highlighting the risks, like 3 to 4% increased chance of serious health issues with kids from first cousin unions, the post downplayed them, saying things like, not all cousin marriages lead to problems. Yeah, not every raging alcoholic has to have a liver replaced also, but it's still not recommended. I was glad to see that a lot of people were calling it out as pretty much promoting incest, inter-family relationships, whatever you want to call it. Within days, the NHS had yanked the post offline. But why publish it in the first place? This isn't just bad science. I mean, they were ignoring science in the article. This is more of creating a mood of cultural acceptance based on what we have. In other words, I'm speaking of the UK. If they have an influx of inbreeders coming into their country, mostly Muslims, and mostly Pakistan, by the way, if they have an influx of that, and they can't change that culture, and they know that they can't change that culture, then they start to twist and manipulate science, and essentially, but really acceptance, to accept that. And to say, okay, well, we know that it's wrong. We know scientifically it's wrong. But if we can't change the culture or the habits, we may as well make it to where it's more acceptable so that everybody can be happy. See, that's the problem with people being so scared to seem insensitive. You start to accept things that are unacceptable. It is not acceptable, Roll Tide, to inbreed. You get lower IQ, you get all kinds of birth defects. You get, if you have cousin, uncle, niece, and that does happen, by the way. It's not just cousin. They make it sound more, I'm not saying innocent, that first cousin and first cousin marriages are okay, but people tend to be, okay, well, that's not like the family. But when you get uncle, niece, dad, daughter, those kinds of things, what you're going to have is, if this lineage, and I'm not trying to get too off into the weeds on this, but let's say cousin, for instance, they have the same grandparent, right? If the grandparent has a defective gene, then both of those people, the male and the female, who are first cousins, likely, and in most cases, will carry that same defective gene. So now they're pairing up with two of the same defective genes and putting it into one child. You're almost guaranteed birth defects at that point, and a child and offspring of that inbred couple having lots of issues down the road. Not just the fact that they're going to be a crappy life because now they're a lower IQ and they have other issues, but just the defects that they could potentially have They're carrying that on. Of course, they're likely to inbreed and make it even worse. We're talking about centuries of inbreeding. So it's constantly getting worse and depleting and lowering the IQ of the people who continuously carry on that tradition of inbreeding within their communities, their religions, wherever. And it's absolutely cultural pandering based on all these immigrants that they continuously let in, because cousin marriage is relatively rare among native Brits, less than 1% of the marriages overall. But it's shockingly common in certain immigrant communities, especially British Pakistanis, who are predominantly Muslim. Studies show up to 55 to 60% of marriages in these groups are between cousins or worse, often first cousins. Why is this? It's tied to traditions from places like Pakistan, where it's seen as a way to keep family ties strong and property within the clan. In the UK, it's leading to real problems. I laugh when they say it makes the family unit tighter. Well, I guess it does. Both first cousins already know who Momo is. It's not like you're bringing two families together. It's the same family. You literally have one family. Can you imagine the weddings? I mean, you're not bringing two families together, right? So it's probably half the people. The weddings are probably a lot cheaper. The receptions are probably a lot cheaper. We don't need as big a cake. We don't need so many hors d'oeuvres. One family, not two. Now I'm going to get down and dirty. I'm going to give you some numbers, some raw numbers, some actual factual numbers. This might ruffle some feathers, but I don't care, because facts don't care about feelings. They stand on their own. They're factual. A 2023 study linked this to higher infant mortality and conditions like thalassemia in South Asian groups. The NHS spends millions treating these preventable issues every single year. And yet, instead of calling for education or even a ban, the system bends over backwards to avoid stigmatizing or offending anybody, because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings for those 60% of Pakistanis who are already inbreeding. They are so worried that criticizing inbreeding will somehow offend some Muslims and the Islamic culture. If it's dangerous, and not only that, if it's so evil to pass this on to children, why are you worried about offending a religion if it's not a religious component? So many places that I look said, oh, you can't tie inbreeding to Muslims because that's unfair to Muslims. When most of the countries who are inbreeding are Muslims. I'm not afraid to offend them because it's a fact. This is not an attack on Muslims, it's an attack on people who are inbreeding. They just happen to be mostly Muslims. I didn't create that. That is an actual fact that exists. I'm sorry if the actual facts of today's world offend you, Muslims, but this is a fact I'm just reporting on. This ain't my opinion. I'm literally showing you that it's factual data. You know it. Think about this. In 2008, a government minister blamed immigrant inbreeding for a surge in birth defects. Fast forward to 2025, and the NHS is listing this as a benefit? That ain't progress. That's regression, man. It's no doubt it's driven by fear of offending a certain voting bloc. You tell me which voting bloc that is. Meanwhile, that awesome healthcare system in the UK, they're footing the bill for it. So the British taxpayers who are not inbreeding and banging their cousins are paying for all the inbreeding Pakistanis out there who think it's okay, and they think it's a good thing. I'm not saying all Muslims practice this. Plenty don't. Some British Pakistanis are even shifting away from this. But the numbers do not lie. Without the influx of immigration numbers the way they are, with communities that accept and promote inbreeding, if we didn't have that, this wouldn't be a problem. In fact, it wouldn't even be a topic of consideration in the UK. We're only talking about it because it's becoming a problem. And now that it's become a problem and people are talking about it, oops, somebody's getting offended. So now we got to twist this in spite of the facts and make it look like it has a plus side to it. There's an upside to inbreeding. This is an absolute public health crisis, and they're trying to give it the look of multiculturalism instead of calling it what it is. How far will we go to appease people who are doing something that's wrong for fear of hurting their feelings? And look, I want to point out another thing. Obviously, with inbreeding comes lower IQ. So you can't reason with these people who are inbreeding. That's another thing. You can't sit them down and talk to them and say, hey, you really need to talk to your younglings and maybe start shifting away from so much inbreeding. I mean, there's plenty of other people from other families out here, might have a bigger wedding, might cost you a little more to put these two together, but it's better than having mentally retarded children or people with birth defects out there. But no, we can't offend them. And the only emotion we get out of them is they're being offended because they're too stupid with the lowered IQ from all the inbreeding to understand the logic that you're presenting to them, like in this video. Think I'm being a little rough? Well, come on, there's more. There are well-documented cognitive and developmental effects. You don't have to search the internet for very long to see. In fact, if you look right here, examples that they're citing say that in Pakistan, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia found average IQs of 5 to 10 points lower among children of first cousin parents. Again, that's the best case scenario of first cousins. That's not including more tightly inbreeding practices in a lot of these religions or a lot of these areas. But 5 to 10 points lower. Guys, that's what they admit. Nobody is going to tell you that you're suffering from 20 to 30 point IQ point cognitive decline. No one is going to admit that because the people who are collecting this data and sharing it, yes, a lot of them are scientists, but they also belong to this same culture. So they don't want to hit it too hard. So yeah, maybe 5 or 10 points. Well, 5 or 10 points might be the difference between somebody going to a good school and a bad school. I understand IQ is not learned, but in a lot of cases, it's a product of what the education level is at. So you probably have a swing of 5 to 10 points in IQ, measurable IQ as far as testing goes, based on stuff like that. It's way more than 5 to 10%. Way more. That's like asking a terrorist country how many terrorists live in your country. Ask Afghanistan how many known terrorists they have living in their country. They're probably going to say, oh, probably only 1 or 2 instead of 10 or 15,000, right? So your information is only as good as the people who are delivering that information. And again, these countries who believe in and support inbreeding are certainly not going to give you accurate IQ numbers whenever you ask for them. But this is where I think it's worse because you're passing these things down to children. Reduced immune system diversity. That's a shame. You're giving this knowingly. And again, I understand your lower IQ. You may not understand this, but you are passing this down to your children. Greater susceptibility to complex diseases. Shorter average lifespan. Look down at the bottom, genetic bottlenecks, stigma, and social isolation. Of course, that's going to come with it, especially when you're in an area it's not acceptable. And maybe that's why this article was written, to try to make it more acceptable in the UK, but that did not work. And of course, the greater economic burden. Well, of course that is. That's just what I stated earlier. Somebody else is going to pay for the shortcoming and the lack of contribution to society by these inbred people. That's going to be the taxpayers who are working their butts off, who are not inbred and who are more successful. They are going to pay for these inbred immigrants that come into their countries. Now, I didn't want you to take my word for it that some of these countries have very high inbreeding rates, so I wanted to show you this. Now, you're going to see this word here, consanguineous. That's inbreeding. That's a pretty word for inbreeding. When you see consanguineous, understand that that is simply talking about intermarriage or, people cousin to cousin, uncle to niece, all that kind of stuff. It's just a pretty sugary word for inbreeding, so just understand that. Of course, Pakistan is blowing it out the water over here with 61.2% inbreeding rate. Incredible. And if you go down the list, you're going to see all of these countries, every single one of them, Middle East and Africa. That's where all these high inbreeding rates come from. Again, this next chart that I put together shows you that Pakistan is just, again, along with Sudan, here we go with having countries in the Middle East and then Africa just killing it when it comes to inbreeding. But yeah, you're going to see here in a second that those IQ rates kind of mirror that. Now, this might be a little bit more effective as far as showing you these rates. Look at how colorful Northern Africa is. This is inbreeding, not IQ. Otherwise, more of Africa would have these colors to them. This is strictly inbreeding. Look at how we have the Middle East and Northern Africa. Again, where it's accepted in Muslim communities. These are predominant Muslim communities where they are definitely pushing the limits in terms of inbreeding. I'm a little shocked that Alabama doesn't show up on the map over here, but I guess it's watered down by the rest of the United States. So I put this chart together to show you prevalence of how IQ is affected by inbreeding. Again, using their word, consanguinity, whatever, inbreeding. If you look at the far left-hand column, I capped this at an IQ level of 100. That's the IQ level on the far left-hand side, and across the bottom there, that's going to be our inbreeding rates. So I capped it at 100. Of course, there are higher IQ numbers out there per country, like China, Japan are going to have higher than 100. So I just stopped it at 100. You have United Kingdom, United States at the very top, but notice they're all the way over to the left. That's because the inbreeding rate is roughly around 0 to 1, right? So that's why you have, this is a very clear, in my opinion, correlation of showing that inbreeding directly affects IQ. Let's go to the complete other end of the spectrum. Look to the far right-hand side where you see Pakistan. Pakistan, this is almost comical. Pakistan has a very high inbreeding rate above 60%, right? They also have a very low IQ of hovering around 79. So Pakistan is a clear indicator that a high level of inbreeding is going to result in a low level IQ. And honestly, guys, down there at the bottom where we have Yemen and Mauritania, I don't know what they're doing, but whatever it is, they should stop. Yeah, those are high levels of inbreeding for sure, 45 to 40-something%, high 40s. But look at the IQ. When you have an IQ in the 60s, you are mentally retarded. These are an average of an entire country in the 60s. So these are mentally retarded countries. And I'm using that in the clinical term of mental retardation. But again, mostly Muslim countries, right? So again, I know that offends people. I don't care. I didn't make these facts. I found these facts. They were already there. I might use a little sarcasm and a little obvious tone to my voice because this is a problem. Certainly not an advantage to anybody who is involved in inbreeding, but all these numbers are verifiable out there. You go get them. So Muslims who are offended are mad at their own culture that they can't seem to explain away because, again, now they're beat down with that lower IQ, so you can't reason with them. You can't talk to them. So they're just beating their head against the wall because they're too stupid to actually include any logic into an argument to support the fact that they believe inbreeding is a good thing. It's not. Speaking of that, the world Muslim population is 1.9 billion, according to the Pew Research Center. And roughly 25 to 30% of those people live in families formed by at least one inbred marriage. In fact, usually multiple over decades, possible centuries of inbreeding. So we have 475 to 575 million individuals are part of lineages affected by close kin inbreeding reproduction at some point. That figure includes mostly first and second cousin unions, but obviously there is much tighter inbreeding in tons of these communities because once you accept it at that level, most other levels become, at least at some point, acceptable to some people, especially those with lower IQs who don't understand the danger of close inbreeding. Guys, my point is not to beat up on one particular ideology or another. My point is trying to normalize and put a sugar coating on a dog turd is the opposite of what we should be doing. Again, I go back to, I understand you are going to have a tough time educating a mentally retarded person who has an IQ of between 60 and 70, 79 even. I understand that. Good luck educating them. Certainly good luck changing their mind, especially if they're clinging to a religion that they live their life by. If their religion finds it acceptable, you're not going to change that person. Combine that with a low IQ and you will never change that. That's why we're dealing with this epidemic of immigration, purposeful immigration, illegal immigration, and some legal immigration, but infiltrating like cockroaches into all these other countries and then trying to change the culture. This was a very clear-cut sign of the UK trying to change a culture to somehow or another mind F people into thinking that inbreeding now is acceptable, and not just acceptable, but a good thing, because now it improves a stronger family unit. They are not trying not to share any of the negative impacts of inbreeding because they've basically given up. They've said, it's here, we can't do anything about it, may as well accept it and make some friends along the way. Guys, I'm not here to make friends. I am not here to make friends. I am here to pass on as much truth as I can. And this is a hard truth for some people to accept, but it is an absolute fact. Using all the data that anybody can access out there on the internet, this is not hard to find. But if you don't want to find it, you won't. It's just like anything else. When you refuse to accept the truth, you look in other areas so you don't have to find that truth. Well, guess what? Where a lot of that truth is, there's a whole lot of really helpful stuff there too, besides just that. But when you ignore that and you look over here and you you'll never find things that will help you, make you a better person. You're always going to be stuck in these caveman days. And look, UK is just about lost. London is gone. London is gone. I was in London 2006, I believe it was, somewhere around in 2006 or 2007. And I never will forget. I was going to a doctor's office on the other side of London from where we were staying. I used to be really involved in the fight industry, and Don King had flown me over there with a fighter, DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley, who was going to fight for the WBC title fight against Junior Witter. Junior Witter was an English fighter. So that was kind of like one of the things, this is the title fight, but we're going to have it in England now instead of the States. So I went over there with him. I was helping work the corner. Chop Chop Corley, DeMarcus, is a friend of mine. And we go over there, and Chop had to go. The UK has, or at least London, had their boxing association had different types of rules. Chop Chop had asthma. Well, in the United States, it's easy to get clearance to fight by the Boxing Association if you have asthma, but in London, you apparently can't fight. At least back then, I don't think you could fight if you had asthma. So you had to get clearance from a doctor to say it was okay, which was weird because we were already there for the title fight. So we take this ride to the other side of London, and in doing so, we had to pass through the Muslim community. If you've not been to London and driven through the Muslim community, again, this was early 2000s, mid 2006, 2007. This community looked like we had left London and entered into a completely different country. We're talking about markets on the street, partially in the street, selling fruits, vegetables, whatever their wares were, the clothing. The clothing was different. Everybody, the women had hijabs and their little curtain-looking dresses on. The guys were all wearing dresses. Very, very, very Muslim. No Western attire whatsoever. There was Islamic text on all the buildings. It was not written in English. It was back then becoming an acceptable part. And I'm sure they were thinking, it can't get too bad. Here we are 20 years later, and it's too bad. Like it's bad. Like it's affecting their politics. It's affecting everything else over there. London, I think, is a lost cause. The rest of the UK, I believe they have a chance, and they are fighting back in some cases. But they have lost London. It's gone. That's what they're trying to do everywhere. The Muslims are. They want to infiltrate every area, and they're okay with your own culture as long as they are a small percentage of that community. But as they grow, their numbers grow, and they become the majority in that community, that's where their Sharia law and their acceptance in a lot of these overtly Muslim things start shining through. And I can tell you, I'm here to tell you as a fact, there is nothing good that comes out of Orthodox Islam. Nothing good. These radical Islamic Muslims want to take over everything, and they're patient. They will wait us out. So continue to accept their little things here and there, piece by piece by piece. As a whole, they are a very patient community. And inbreeding is not the only thing that is negative about them. Wait until you start accepting them and you see how many other things like this Texas community that they're wanting to build for only Muslims, already violating the Constitution by doing that. But this is a bad thing. And it starts with, I have to go back to, accepting the wrong things, the bad things that are not just socially unacceptable like inbreeding. They're scientifically unacceptable. These are things that harm children for decades and centuries after that as you continue to do it. Do you think I'm wrong here? Do you think I'm being too hard on the inbreeding and the Muslim communities that accept and incorporate that into their daily lifestyle? Do you think it's a wrong thing? It's sickening to me. But again, I'm cut from a different cloth than these people are. Guys, if you liked the video, please share it. Please tell your friends about it. Comment down below. Am I wrong about this? Is this something that I'm spending a little bit too much time on because I simply don't agree with it? Or is this a bad thing? And is the UK wrong for trying to normalize inbreeding? Don't forget, guys, if you're looking for a book to educate yourself and to educate the idiots out there who can't think for themselves regarding mass shootings, go to damnliars.net. Again, damnliars.net, and get my brand new book, Damn Liars.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
It's hanging around.